For one moment, I would like you to imagine what your life would look like if you grew up as an orphan. What you would feel like or who you would be if you grew up without the stability of a home or the comfort of knowing that there are people in your corner who love you unconditionally. However that made you feel, whether it was sad or mad, or maybe you've even experienced this for yourself. The fact of the matter is, there are roughly 153 million children worldwide who know what it's like to live in a world without parents. On February 1st, 2019, my family welcomed two beautiful children into our home through the process of adoption. While it was the most rewarding experience, it also came with intruding home visits and hours of paperwork. Today, approximately 117,000 children in the United States alone are in the foster care system waiting to be adopted. One possible solution to reduce this issue is prohibiting international adoptions. Today, I will discuss two major perspectives on this topic, and then I invite you to share your own. First, I will begin explaining the logistical differences between adopting domestically and adopting internationally. The National Infertility Association in 2022 explains that there are a few key differences between adopting internationally and domestically, including demographic requirements, availability of medical history on birth families, and the actual process. Adopting internationally requires one to be at least 25 years old to be accepted into an international adoption program. In comparison, you only have to be 21 years old to adopt domestically in the United States. Furthermore, when adopting internationally, some countries have outright age limits on how old you can be, and some even have age limits on the difference that can exist between adoptee and adopter. With domestic adoptions, information on medical history is often extensive and readily available, at least on the birth mother side. On the other hand, international adoptions rarely have any information on family history, often only being able to provide medical reports on the child, him or herself. Finally, the process of adopting internationally involves a traditional waiting list. Once you're on the list, you must wait to get to the top before you can adopt. This is very different to the domestic process, as an adopter will create a personal profile that will be shown to prospective birth mothers until one selects you. If you think about it, it's kind of like the Tinder of adoptions. Now that we understand some of the differences between domestic and international adoptions, let's see what proponents of international adoptions have to say on the topic. Proponents of international adoptions have many different views. However, today I will only be discussing two: predictability and the notion of no child left behind. Virginia Spence, in her article, "Why Do Some People Choose to Adopt Internationally Rather Than Domestically?" explains that some families choose international adoptions because of predictable wait times and costs, saying that adopting internationally is an overall more straightforward process, making it overall more desirable for many people. Additionally, proponents of international adoptions claim that no child should be left behind. Holt International, an accredited adoption agency, points out that every year, the vast majority of children being adopted internationally have some kind of disability. Furthermore, explaining that orphans in developing countries face unparalleled disadvantages, such as lack of access to medical care, risk of being conscripted for child labor, and risk of death due to unhealthy living conditions. Finally, let's discuss what opponents of international adoptions have to say on the topic. Over the course of my research, I found that opponents to international adoptions opinions vary vastly. However, most fear the number of children needing to be adopted domestically and high rates of international adoptee abuse. Christy Gleason, Vice President of Global Programs for Bethany Christian Planning Services, an accredited adoption agency, explains, and I quote, Our decision to phase out of international adoptions is not a criticism of the program, but a reflection of our desire to serve children in our own communities, claiming that their agency will solely focus on combating the orphan crisis in the United States. The American Bar Association Journal published the article Far From Home, which discusses the issue of rehoming. Rehoming is when adoptive parents post an advertisement on the internet to give away their adopted child to a stranger. This article explains that the majority of child victims of rehoming are adopted children from international countries. This often happens because there's a lack of safeguards and reliable documentation for international children, causing and creating a greater risk of unethical conduct than would be seen in domestic adoptions. Now that you have heard the perspectives of proponents and opponents of international adoptions, I would love to hear what you have to say on the topic. So to start this discussion, I have an open-ended question for you guys to think about. If international adoptions were to be banned in the United States, how do you think other countries would react, and would this affect our global connections to countries? Would we see other countries not accepting us economically or socially? Whatever you think on that.
I think it could be a little bit of both. You could see a lot more probably in other countries of, homelessness of kids, kids just being left out on their own. And I could see where United States could fall and say, they could blame our country for not wanting to take these children, and there could be a big crisis on that. But I would see a lot more homelessness in other countries with children that are just left out on their own.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Americans in the United States should be adopting from within our own country first, because there is such a big problem in the United States. And I think the politicians who control this process should leave politics out of it. And at the end of the day, it's always what's best for the kids, in my opinion. Placing children in stay homes without abuse and neglect should be a top priority, whether they're international countries or from their own country. I think there's a in the process of, and that's why maybe there's a lot of replacement, like you said, rehoming them in that process. And so if we can find a system that's stability and safety for the kids that need these homes, to be their top priority.
And I have to agree. I've been through the process of adopting 3 times now, and I think that maybe the reason people adopt out of the country is because it might be an easier process, because going through the process myself it's really intrusive in your family. It's time consuming. Not only that, each state has their own different laws to adopt. For instance, I adopted within Colorado, but then moved to Florida, and Florida had to be involved with the Colorado adoption, and Florida was so much more stressful that it almost made me not want to ever adopt again.
I love that you have personal experience to build off of. Thank you all for your participation. That's about all the time we have left for discussion. Today, I informed you about why people believe international adoption should or shouldn't be banned. I hope I have provided you with vast and knowledgeable information on this topic. Your voices have truly been heard and appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great job, Trinity.
Thank you.